Nobody believes that inflation is running at what the government says it's running at. That's absurd. Nobody believes it anymore. I mean, for years they were able to mask it because labor was outsourced to China. So we didn't see it show up in labor costs. But when you have like Paul Krugman at the New York Times say that inflation's good for the lower classes and the working class, but then at the same time you see a report that categorically, patently states that the inflation is reduced purchasing power to levels that are make any wage gains insignificant, if not negative. You know, you have to ask yourself, who is Paul Krugman working for? Who is the New York Times working for? It's not for Americans. What foreign government is directing Paul Krugman at this point? He's saying things that are patently false and misleading. So I have to really question that. So, I mean, it's no secret that inflation is running, 15%. If you look at loss of purchasing power, you're talking 15%. It's really galloping out of control.
Bitcoin fixes that though. How?
Because it's finite supply and it's got infinite demand and it's a safe harbor, and that's where people are going to protect themselves against fiat money. You can't print Bitcoin. You can print fiat money. Gold supply is not fixed either. So it's the go-to commodity. That's why Paul Tudor Jones calls it the fastest horse in the race. Paul Tudor Jones is one of the first people to come out and say, maybe 2.5 years ago, that inflation was going to be a problem. And this is when policymakers were saying that they were warning against deflation. He was saying, no, it's actually inflation. It's going to become a problem. That's why I'm buying inflation-sensitive assets. And Bitcoin is the fastest horse in the race. And he put 1% of his portfolio into Bitcoin. I believe he's raised that allocation to 5%. Then Michael Saylor, of course, came out and said, hey, the monetary energy of the US dollar is depreciating by 15% a year. That's the true inflation number. Your purchasing power is being destroyed by 15% a year. We're buying Bitcoin as our play against inflation. And I must say, heroically, Michael Saylor could have borrowed money from the Fed and bought back their own stock, and he could have made a lot of money doing what Microsoft and Google and Amazon and all those corporations do. They buy back their own stock, which, by the way, was illegal not too long ago, with that ultra low interest rate from the Fed. You see, when the Fed says there's not much inflation, therefore they're going to keep interest rates low, they're doing that so that insiders can borrow at those ultra cheap rates, buy their own stock, their executive stock options double, triple, quadruple, they cash out, and they make a lot of money. But us who are not in on that game, if we go on our credit card, it's still 18%, Daniela. How come my credit card interest rate is still 17, 18% during the last 5 to 10 years when rates have come down?
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Substantially. How come my Visa, MasterCard is not at 5 or 6%? Right? Because it's what I call interest rate apartheid. If you're not a friend of Goldman Sachs, you live in a Bantustan, you live in a ghetto of high interest rates, and you're squeezed, and you never get to save any money. But if you're a friend of Goldman Sachs, you get to borrow at 0%, invest in assets, and you collectively are buying the same assets. Those go up in price, then you can use those as collateral to borrow more money and just repeat this over and over again. That's why the wealth and income gap, the wealth gap is so high in America. It's higher now than even during the robber baron era because of this interest rate apartheid engineered by the Fed, condoned by Nancy Pelosi. And this is why Bitcoin is going to, $220,000 in the short term and going a lot higher as interest rates and the dollar create this insurmountable obstacle for anyone trying to save money who's not in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has always been decoupled. It's on its own vector. It's not correlated to anything. So it started off at essentially zero, and it's heading to be essentially Bitcoin. You have to understand, Bitcoin is a 51% attack on the global energy. So 51% of all global energy will be dedicated to Bitcoin, and this will starve to death all fiat money, shitcoins, and gold. And the price is essentially going to infinity because in dollar terms, because the dollar is going to zero. So it's on its own vector. It's not correlated to anything. Occasionally, in any 6-month period, you could look at a chart and say, oh, why is this correlated or not correlated? But over 10 years, 11 years, it's not correlated to anything. It breaks all the rules. Again, as Michael Saylor has said, it smashes all the rules. Unlike gold, you have with Bitcoin an impenetrable wall of encryption that protects the underlying protocol, and the demand ultimately is infinite. So Bitcoin has infinite demand, gold does not. And gold also is being replaced by Bitcoin.
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dan, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dan.